What is up, guys? Today we're taking a look at the Hydro Sprint X paddle by Black Project Sub, which is a paddle designed to positively take your sprint speeds up a few more notches when it comes to your sprint races. Today we're taking a look at how this paddle is constructed and designed, as well as taking a look at 4 different versions of this paddle when it comes to the blade size. We're taking a look at the small blade, the medium blade, the large blade, and the XL blade. As well as I'll also be showing you a few field tests with all these different paddles in terms of how these different paddle blade sizes, as well as different shaft lengths, may or may not affect your overall top speeds. Then at the very end of this video, I'm going to share with you which one of these paddles I'm going to choose for myself when it comes to my future sprint races. So let's get started. So let's take a quick look now at how this paddle is constructed and designed. So on the top of this paddle here, we have Black Project Sub's Power Grip handle. Moving down in this shaft, we have a shaft that's constructed with our text carbon material, as well as this shaft is very neat because actually it is a tapered shaft. So what that means is that the shaft is actually the thickest down by the paddle blade, and as you get closer towards the handle section, the shaft actually gets narrower. So why this is so important is because it allows you to get more power into your paddle stroke by the thicker part of it towards the paddle blade. But what's great is as the shaft gets narrower towards the handle part, it allows you to have more flex in the top part of that shaft, helping protect your shoulders as you're powering at a higher cadency and with more power in your paddle strokes for those sprint races. Moving down to the actual blade itself now on this paddle, at the very top of the blade, we have their advanced flow technology, which helps eliminate that lateral blade movement as you're paddling along in the water. What's also unique about this paddle blade in comparison to other Black Project Subs paddles is that this paddle blade actually has a wider design to it, allowing you to get more grip on that water, which allows you to put more power in your paddle strokes and allows you to increase your overall top speeds. Another unique feature with this paddle blade is actually it has a shallower pocket here on the back side of it, as well as the overall volume of this blade is less, which allows you to have a faster entry and exit as you're going through your paddle strokes, allowing you to paddle at that higher cadency with faster reps and with less effort. So overall, this is a great paddle design with definitely the sprinter in mind. So when it comes to trying to achieve your fastest speeds possible on your paddleboard, there are obviously a ton of factors that take place. And one of those major factors being is actually using the correct paddle blade size and shaft length to help you achieve those fastest speeds possible. So with that, I ran a couple of tests for you guys to show you how different blade sizes as well as different shaft lengths can play a major role in affecting your overall top speeds. So on the first day of testing, I tested out each one of these paddles with a shaft length of 82 inches tall. Now I personally have a height of 76 inches tall, so it helps you have an idea of how my height compares to the overall shaft height of each one of these paddles for that first day of testing. So when it came to the water conditions for this first day of testing, I made sure I went out when the tide was at its highest point, make sure I had minimal push from current as I was paddling along to give me the most accurate results. As well as the wind was around 5 knots this day, and so overall it was a pretty calm day to get pretty accurate results for overall top speeds for each one of these paddles. So the way I designed the testing for this day as well as the second day is I started off with the smallest blade size, and what I did was I built up the paddling to my max speed within 15 seconds to get a recording on my apps to see what my top speed was for each one of these paddles. I also made sure I paddled in the same direction on the water, which was paddling against that slight breeze, to give me a proper, accurate comparison between each one of these paddle blades as well. Another thing that I do need to mention also for this first day of testing is that I actually did not test a large blade size out on the same day I tested out all these other paddle blades with a shaft length of 82 inches tall. The reason for this is actually I went to a competition in California for the first ever USA Sub National Championships and actually brought the large blade with me to use and compete at that competition. So with that, when I first got this paddle blade in my hand, I actually used this and tested it out a few weeks earlier to get a result for that 82 inches tall length of a shaft, and then actually cut it down a little bit shorter to use for my competitions in California. So with that being said, I did not test that paddle within the same day I did test out these other paddles out with a shaft length of 82 inches tall. So I do apologize for that, but it helps you understand and explain when you see the difference in footage from this day of why the large paddle blade has a different background and scenery in comparison to these other paddle blades on this first day of testing. So with that being said, let's dive into this first round of testing. All right, so I've already done a nice warm-up paddle before all this. So I'm just come out here, do a few strokes with a smaller blade to get a feel for it, do a little sprint mock-up, and then I'm gonna do the actual speed test. But overall, first impressions, I still feel like I get a good grasp of the water, even with the smaller sized blade. So I'm really curious to see what the final results, will be in terms of the top speed for each of these paddle blades. It's gonna be a fun one.
There is a nice little slight breeze this morning. Probably around 5 knots or so. So let's try to keep that in consideration as well in comparison to the second round of testing in a few more days. All right. So I've already started Strava on my phone as well as Paddle Logger on my watch. Trying to get a comparison of top speeds for both the apps. All right, here we go. You can do a slow paddle into it and pick it up from there for about 15 seconds. Woo! All right, just one done. Let's hop on over now to the medium-sized blade. All right, now I have the medium blade in my hands here. And I can tell, believe it or not, that it does have a slight more grip in the water due to its larger blade size. But it still feels great. All right, let a few boat wakes pass me by. And jump into the second test. All right, here we go. Woo! There we go. Second test done. Turned around here. Head on back for the final test with the final paddle today. Here we go. All right, last test of the day with the extra large paddle blade. Wow, this thing is a beast. I can totally tell the difference jumping from the medium up to the XL. Wow, a lot of blade you're working with. Tons of grasp in the water. And it does have a little bit more weight to it as well. I can definitely tell the difference in just paddle weight. Jumping from the medium up to this XL. Just because you have all that additional weight added to the extra size, or the larger size here, in this XL paddle. So get a few strokes in here, and then get this test underway. All right, here we go. Last test. Woo. There we have it. All 3 tests done for the day. Woo! Let's find out what the results were.
All right, let's check out the official results now from paddling each one of these paddles with a shaft length of 82 inches tall. So I record, as I said in the video, with both the Strava app as well as the Paddle Logger app to kind of get a comparison with speeds with each of these apps. So starting off with a small blade, Strava says I paddled a small blade with a max speed of 12.4 kilometers an hour. Then Paddle Logger said I paddled it at 11.91 kilometers an hour. Moving on to the medium-sized blade, Strava said I did it in 12.4 once again. And then Paddle Logger said I did it in 12.91. Then with the large blade, since I did paddle it a few weeks earlier, I actually only used Strava to record my top speed. And on this day too, the conditions were much calmer on the water, super flat and chill. So it said I paddled actually at 14.4 kilometers an hour, which is significantly higher than the rest of the results from today. And then lastly, with the XL blade, Strava said I did it in 12.1, and then Paddle Logger said 12.28. So as I said, unfortunately, since I was not able to paddle on the same day with my large blade size with the rest of these paddles, the results are a little bit varied because the water conditions were a little bit different on comparison to both those days of testing. But when you look at the overall results in terms of the small, medium, XL blade, the results are kind of varying with slight differences, with mostly around 12 kilometers an hour. So I definitely would put the large blade, if I were to test it on the same day as well, closer to the mark also for a better comparison, but unfortunately that didn't happen, so it kind of gives you the results from that first day as well as that day I tested the large paddle blade a few weeks earlier. So with those results, now we'll move on to the second day of testing where I tested out each one of these paddles once again, but with a shorter overall shaft length. So as I said, that first round was done with 82 inches tall each one of these shafts, but then I went back home after that first day of testing and cut each one of the shafts down by 2.5 inches, bringing that shaft overall length down to 79.5 inches overall. So the theory with this is that if you paddle with a shorter shaft length, it allows you to have a lower stance, allowing you to have a faster cadency as well as more power in your paddle strokes as you're paddling for the shorter sprint races. So in order to test this theory out, that is why I cut each one of these paddle shafts down by 2.5 inches to show if there actually was an increase in my speed by paddling with a shorter paddle shaft. So with that being said, let's move into the second day of testing.
All right, welcome back to day number 2 of paddle testing now with the Sprint X paddle. Today the shaft is now cut shorter to 79.5 inches long, so 2.5 inches shorter than the last test I did 2 days ago. So once again, I've already come out here already and done a nice warm-up paddle. So now I'm gonna come out here and do this test for each one of these paddles the same way I did it 2 days ago. I'm just gonna get warmed up here a little bit with the paddle, and then I'm gonna do a short build up to my max speed for around 15 seconds long. So once again, starting off with this small blade size paddle, and stays conditions on the water are with a slight breeze, pretty similar to 2 days ago, which is good. Kind of give us similar results. And then the current as well is not much right now because I came out here at high tide once again to help minimize any kind of pull or push with current on the water. So I'm excited to see how these paddles do today, to see if there's any kind of difference in my speed with paddling with a lower paddle shaft and a lower stance. So let's see how we go. All right, set up here, and away we go. Woo! First round done. Oh yeah, feeling good. All right, we'll switch on over to the medium-sized blade. All right, got the medium blade in my hands now. Get a little warmed up. Let's do the test with it. And it's crazy how I can definitely feel the difference in the weight in these paddles with each blade size that I go up. That small blade is so light. It's incredible. But you kind of sacrifice that weight with having a bigger blade and more grip in the water. All right, let's see how this medium blade goes. Woo. Second test done. Woo. All right. Let's swap out to the large blade. Alrighty, on to the large blade now. This has been the blade I've used the most for these sprints. As it's the blade I chose to use for my USA Sup National Championships. That was also before I had the chance to test all these paddles. So I'm really curious after all this and then the data, just my personal time using them, which paddle I actually choose to use for my future sprints. Should be interesting. All right, large blade test, here we go. Woo! Oh, I can definitely tell the larger these blades are getting, the more effort I'm having to put in to grab that water and pull myself to it. Woo! Good round. On to the final round now. And there we have it. On to the last test of the day with the XL paddle blade. And this thing is a beast. It's so huge. All right. A few deep breaths here. Let's do this last test of the day. Woo! That's it. We are done. Let's check out the results.
All right, here are the official results now from that second day of testing. Starting off with the small blade, Strava said I did it in 12.8 kilometers an hour, and Paddle Logger said I paddled at top speed of 12.97 kilometers an hour. Then moving on to the medium blade, Strava said I paddled at top speed of 13.3, and Paddle Logger said 14.01. The large blade, Strava said 13.1, Paddle Logger said 13.12. Then the XL blade, Strava said 13.3, and Paddle Logger said 14.11. So with that, there is some variation now, as you see here, between Strava and Paddle Logger, but it looks like overall Strava did the best job in keeping the results kind of similar throughout all the testing for each of the blade sizes. So looking at the results, you see there's not a ton of variation between each of these blade sizes on this day of paddling, but when you do compare these results to overall results of the first day of testing from the longer shaft height, you can see overall there was an increase or a slight increase in my overall top speed with paddling with a shorter shaft length. So that does go to show you that paddling with a shorter shaft length does help you increase your top speeds by a little bit. It allows you to have that shorter stance, getting more power into your paddle strokes as you're paddling for those shorter distances. Now obviously this does depend on your paddle stroke style as well as your height as a person, your body weight, the type of board you're paddling. As I said, there's a lot of other factors when it comes to choosing the correct paddle shaft length and height. So if you are someone who is new to sprint racing or paddleboard racing in general, I highly recommend that you do check out Black Project Sub's paddle size chart to give you an idea of where to know to start with your shaft height and work down from there. All right, let's end things out now talking about my personal thoughts and reflections now after paddling each one of these paddle blades out in the water. And at the end of the day, which one am I going to choose for my future sprint races? So first off, overall, these paddles felt so smooth when it came to my entry and exit phase through my paddle strokes. In comparison to my Hydro FlowX paddle, I feel like these paddles have a smoother and faster entry and exit phase as I'm paddling along. That definitely has to do with the blade angle as well as having the reduced blade volume overall in these paddles, helping to have that smoother entry and exit phase that we talked about from the beginning of this video. So with that being said, I definitely could feel a difference in comparison to paddling my Hydro FlowX paddle. Along with that, another characteristic from these paddles that I really enjoyed was that taper shaft design. I love the feeling these paddles gave with the paddling in the water at those higher cadences with more power, and the way I could get the flex on the top of that shaft from having that taper design in the paddle shaft. but at the same time still maintaining great power and paddle strokes by having a thicker design towards the paddle blade itself. So overall, that design feature is incredible, and I absolutely love that about this paddle. Now, when it comes to looking at each one of these paddles separately, from the small blade all the way up to the XL blade, there are definitely some things I noticed with paddling with them on the water. Starting off with the small blade, this blade was obviously the easiest and lightest paddle to use in the water, as it had less blade to push into the water, and also I was grabbing less water with that blade size as well, so it was less effort to pull myself to that paddle blade with each paddle stroke. Then moving up to the XL blade size, obviously since there was more blade to the paddle design itself, it was a much heavier paddle overall, and when I was paddling in the water, I felt like I was grabbing so much water with that paddle blade with it being so large and having to use a lot of effort to pull myself to that paddle blade with every single paddle stroke. So I feel like when I was paddling overall trying to reach my top speeds, when it came to the smaller blade sizes like the small and medium, I was able to have a faster cadency in the water because I was able to pull myself to that paddle blade with less effort because of a little bit smaller blade design, which allowed me to have a faster and a higher cadency. But when I got up to the larger blade sizes, like the large and XL, I feel like my paddle cadency was a little bit slower because I was having to use more effort to pull myself to that paddle blade with each paddle stroke, as I was grabbing more water with the larger blade size, having to use that increased effort to pull myself to that paddle blade with each paddle stroke. So with that being said, I was trying to find a happy medium of having still a high cadency in my paddle stroke, but still getting a good grasp on the water to put a lot of power into my paddle strokes to reach my top speed as well. So after all of my personal testing, as well as seeing the results from each one of those tests, I'd have to say overall I'm deciding to use the medium-sized blade for my future sprint races. Now with that being said, I do feel like in some races, like a 200-meter sprint race, I could get away with using a large blade size, as I did for my race in California a few weeks ago. Even though it does require me to have more effort into my paddle stroke, that race is short enough where I can definitely get away with maintaining my energy still for that length of race as I'm paddling at my highest speeds. But overall, especially when it comes to tech racing, so you're increasing your distance a little bit more in those shorter races to, let's say, like a kilometer up to 5K race, overall, I'll definitely get more enjoyment and better benefit using a medium-sized blade. I still get great power and great speed out of it, but I'm also not going to wear my body out as fast using a larger blade size, such as a large or XL size blade. So I hope that this video helps answer some of your questions about the Hydro Sprint X paddle. But if you still have some more questions about it, feel free to ask those questions in the comments down below. And then lastly, a huge shout out and thank you to Black Project Sup for sponsoring this video and providing all these paddles for me to test out and show you guys, give you an inside scoop on what this paddle is all about. So if you are interested in purchasing this paddle or learning more about Black Project Sup, I encourage you guys to check out their website linked down below. That's it for today's video though, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.